Welcome to the Numinous Factor, the home of spiritual and metaphysical exploration through the guiding lights of Ronnie Mae James, medium, and Claudia Ruland, astrologer. Debate and discussion, observation and openness, stimulation and sensitivity to all matters pertaining to our soul. The Numinous Factor.
Greetings, one and all, to the Numinous Factor. Our first segment on the Numinous Factor today is called Spirits, Talking About Spirits. This is where Ronnie and myself discuss a particular weekly topic relating to the spiritual and metaphysical realms. Today's topic, of course, being our debut episode, is who we are. And I'd like to introduce you to Ronnie Mae James.
Well, hello. Hello, everybody. Yes, there's quite a bit I'd like to say about myself, which is not unusual. But as a medium, I was born with a particular skill, which I didn't realise was mediumship until I got to about 15 or 16. Having been brought up in a very pagan-centred culture, we learnt a lot of different beliefs that are based around the land and the nature, and very much about spiritual being. And also I lived alongside gypsies that came through the village in seasonal time, fruit picking, and so I learned a lot about their culture. So in some ways, I suppose I grew up with them, and so the mediumship just developed from there, and I realised that when I got older that I actually could use it to help people. And I think that's what's inspired me, like yourself, Claudia, to come and share the knowledge that we've got to help people, and invite people at some point to ask us questions so hopefully we can answer them. So there's me, the little old medium.
Little old you. My story's a little different, but my interest with astrology and numerology started when I was quite young, and discovering that I was clairsentient, which is having a higher sixth sense, very strong sensitivity to vibrations around me as well. Certain experiences that I had as a child sort of led me down a slightly different path, I think, to where the world was expecting me to go. But starting to read books when I was quite young in relation to astrology and numerology, and I discovered I had a certain natural niche for it, and just in relation to interpretation and so forth, I quite enjoyed it. And over the years, I've been studying astrology, but actually been doing it now for close to 30 years, and quite often have people that I help when I cast their charts and so forth, and sometimes people just need a little bit of direction and guidance as to where they're going in life, and it does help, and I enjoy it thoroughly.
Yeah. I was just going to say, most people don't really know what a medium means. It's definitely not a large, but a medium, it's a medium, we do see spirits from the other side. We see loved ones that are passed over. They might come and see me. They might give me their name. They might want to communicate. And it might be just to tell their loved ones that they're all right, that everything's okay, that they're not in pain anymore, and life is a peach, really. So mediumship is more than just being a psychic, and it's more than just being a clairvoyant.
Can you remember your first experience when you first saw someone from the other side coming to say hello?
Yeah. I at primary school, we I had a very close friend, Louisa, at the time, and we went everywhere together. There were little villages that was in Cornwall, and it was along the seaside, and her village was probably about a mile past mine, so it was quite an effort for little kids to walk to be with each other, get their bikes or walk across the beach. And unfortunately Louisa developed leukemia quite early on, and subsequently passed away. And I used to say to my school teacher that she was here at school, and they'd say, "No, I'm sorry, darling, she's not here."
Oh, wow.
But I would say, "Well, she is. She's sat right next to me. She's here and she's talking." And they'd say, look, we know that you miss your friend, but, she's passed away and she's not here. So after a while, I just learned to be quiet about it, because Louisa was there. She used to play in the sandpit. And
wow.
Yeah, as I got older, there were obviously subsequent examples of that. And then I realised when I got to about 15 that people didn't see things the same way as I did. And particularly with a culture that reinforces the spiritual side of life, you suddenly realise when you hit the big city, like Plymouth, which, is not a city to us, Melbourne is, you soon realise that you are very different. And people don't quite understand. And I think that's when you kind of question it too. Yeah. Did you ever do that?
My experience with that was more, I lost my brother when I was 7. He was 5. He was run over by a truck in front of our home. And at the age of 7, you don't really understand, where did he go? Why isn't he coming home anymore? And in those days too, because I grew up in Ontario in Canada in those days, so this is the mid-60s, small children under a certain age weren't actually allowed into the hospital, period. So I remember having to sit out in the car and look up at the window, knowing which room he was in, but I wasn't allowed to see him, so I never saw him again. Yeah, he was just gone. So it was very hard for me to understand where he had gone. And so it kind of shifted things for me emotionally, because I was angry, I was confused. I just went through this full range of emotions, and I remember just sitting up in my bed at night and just talking to him and just knowing he was there, if that makes any sense, even though I wasn't actually seeing him, but I just knew his presence was in the room with me. And I just said, you need to, because my parents had just fallen apart. It was a terrible thing to lose a child, and it had affected their relationship terribly. And I just kept saying, you need to let them know that you're okay. So time went by, and the family kind of fell into this strange silence. And my older brother suffered the most, because he blamed himself, because he was supposed to be watching Tim that day when they were playing in the backyard. And Dad came down to breakfast one morning. Now, up to this stage, it had become a bit routine where the breakfasts were quiet. And this particular morning, Dad came downstairs. This was after me asking Tim to just give us a sign, let us know you're okay. Dad sat at the breakfast, and he looked different. He had this big smile on his face, and my mum said, "Oh, you've slept well." And he said, "Yeah, I actually had quite an extraordinary dream last night." And she said, "Well, what did you dream?" She said, "Well," he said, "I dreamt about Tim." "What did you dream?" He said, "Well, we were playing catch in the park like we used to, and after a while, Tim caught the ball, but then instead of throwing it back, he walked up to me and he took my hand and he put the ball in my hand. And he said, 'Dad, I'm okay. You have to let me go.'" And my father he got it. He understood. Yeah. And he said, after that, gave him a hug, and then I just sort of watched him go off into the light. And when he said, when I woke up, I actually felt calm and I felt at peace. And my father was always a very skeptical person, but that was kind of a turning point for him in relation to opening up his mind. Yeah. And sort of accepting that there is something beyond this world where we exist in the physical. Yeah. And that Tim was just letting him know that he was okay.
It's amazing, isn't it? In in our lifetime, you have to wait for a tragedy to happen before you begin to question. Well, I wouldn't say that everyone does it, but people don't really question it until there's a trauma of some sort. You lose a child, or you lose a parent.
Or you become ill.
Or, become ill yourself. But, going back to my childhood, it was something that was very prevalent in part of the growing up. If you said you saw something, they would just say, "Oh, did you? And what did you see?" Rather unlike yours, where, children weren't part of the experience of death. Correct. Yeah, and it's still a very taboo subject, isn't it? It's not something that you celebrate, whereas really we should.
Yes. And there are cultures around the world that do. Yeah, absolutely.
But reinforcing the fact that there is life after death, and people do come back, spirits do come back to see you, to tell you that they're all right.
They're okay.
Yeah. I remember when my mother died, I was still quite young. I was only 11, and she did actually appear in the room at the bottom of the bed. Remember, we talked about the scenario of the grandma turning up.
Yeah.
Well, in my case, it was my mother. And she just waved to me. There was a smile, waved to me and disappeared.
Yep.
And shortly after that, I learnt that she had actually passed away. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Now, this is where I want to jump in.
Yes.
Yep.
Now, I'm going to introduce myself just briefly.
Yeah.
My name is Brody, and I'm the operator of the
Producer,
equipment. But my real job here from time to time is to play the alter ego of the listener.
Yep.
Oh,
I want to
very
ask you a
well.
question that I think our listeners would ask at this stage.
Yeah.
There was a time for both of you that you realised you had a gift.
Yeah.
How did you come to terms, first of all, acknowledging that you had it and could quantify it, and secondly, that you could live with it, knowing that the public would not easily warm to the two the two gifts that you both had?
Oh, that's a good question, Brody. Yeah, because there's no one time where there is a light bulb moment where you think, oh my God, that's it. But for me, probably because my parents died when I was so young. My dad died when I was 9, my mum died when I was 11. And I wanted to go into the nursing profession because I had this desire to give back for all the time that they'd given my mum, who'd been dying over quite a long time of cancer. That when I was nursing, I started to realise then that I could see the soul. So when a patient passed away, the soul leaves the body 20 minutes normally before it dies, before the person passes away. And so that spirit, that soul, would actually have a conversation with me. Or I would know when that person was going to go. So it was like helpful for families to be able to say, I don't think they're going to last the night, where nobody can actually put their finger on it. In one case, I actually had a friend who was told that he had brain cancer and would probably be given 8-9 months to live. I was able to tell him he only had 6 weeks, and he died within 6 weeks.
Wow.
But being able to give that information to him was so helpful, because he said, well, what am I going to do? I said, well, you're going to tell all the people that you really care about how much you love them. If you haven't told them that, do it. If there's things you want people to have, don't wait till you pass, give it to them. And talk, share stories, share your history, so that they can take those stories to the next generation. And that's what he did. So I suppose...
But did you find the gift frightening?
Yes, I did. And there was a stage in my late teens when I mentioned earlier that when I went to live in the city, that there were people that didn't really get what I was saying, and they thought I'd had too much to drink or I was a bit loopy. And that's when I started questioning it. And I hadn't learned to switch it off. I couldn't control it. And it did feel that I was becoming unwell mentally. And then I started going to a spiritual church, and they were able to say, no, what you can do is you can tell the spirits to leave you alone. Because I would be asleep at night and they'd pull my toe, or they'd pull the covers off me because they wanted to talk to me. But I didn't realise I could actually say to them, could you please leave me alone? In fact, I probably didn't say it as quite as polite as that. Well, I can't say that on the podcast. But I'd ask
Yes,
them,
you can.
I'd say, just leave me alone. I'm going to go to sleep. So I learned to switch it off. So, yeah.
Did you have... was it frightening for you when you realised there was a power, or there was this gift?
With me, with clairsentience, it's a little different. It's just you would initially assume as a child when you first start feeling it, you just think everybody has the same ability. But I learned as time went by that what I was able to feel or whatever was unusual. And as time went by, I started to learn how to use it to my advantage. And as depending on circumstances, if I was coming into a situation that was potentially dangerous, or if I was in the presence of someone that was not a very nice person, my radar would go up and I would sense it straight away, and I would know to back away from that person or that situation.
Yeah.
And yeah, just situations, many situations throughout my lifetime. The ability has guided me in the right direction. So it was never terrifying. It was something